Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I think we're going to get started here. I think we may still have some attendees still on their way, but we should be all set to get going. We are picking up a little bit of audio, I think, might be coming in from someone's phone. So I'm going to try to mute people as they arrive, but if everyone could just take a moment to check and see if their phone or headset or computer is muted so that we can cut down on as many outside noises as we can, that would be great. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for attending today's WilsWorld short, Open Educational Resources, the State of the State. My name is Jeff Bruner from Wils, and I have the great pleasure of being your host today. We're going to learn a lot about various OER initiatives happening around Wisconsin from our four speakers today. I just have a couple of quick notes before we start. First, I'm recording today's session, so we will share the recording to our website sometime in the future, in the next few days, I would imagine. As I mentioned before we got started here, we do have a lot of attendees today. This might be our most highly attended WilsWorld short to date, so that's really exciting, but it also means that we have the potential for those kinds of phone muting problems that sometimes come up in web meetings. So if everyone could just, if you're not speaking, please take a moment to make sure that your audio devices are muted so that everyone can hear each other. Or, well, better yet, so that you can hear the presenters. We do, however, want everyone to be able to ask questions and interact. So please feel free to put any questions you might have into the chat box. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and we can relay questions to the speakers that way. Just to keep things moving, we will probably we'll probably just field one question per speaker during their time, but we'll try to kind of round up other questions so that we can get to any others during some Q&A time that we should have at the end of the session. Oh, see, here's the welcome slide that should have been up while I was giving that whole welcome. So just to set the stage, I thought I would give a very brief overview of what we mean when we talk about open educational resources. And I will say thank you to Elizabeth and Kristin, our presenters, for giving me some of this material. So in general, OER, open educational resources, are a type of educational resource that could be a textbook, a tutorial, a lesson plan, a syllabus, a PowerPoint deck, which is shared on the internet and allows other users to interact with it free of copyright restrictions. Often the text or the learning object will be explicitly labeled with a Creative Commons license. Each of the presenters today will explain a little bit about how they define OER at their institution. Each of these speakers will have a unique approach to OER because they're using OER to solve a specific problem or issue at their institution. In the case of higher education, for example, we know that nationally 60% of students do not purchase their textbooks because of the cost. We know that students who don't have access to their course materials often don't succeed or do as well as they could in their courses. Meanwhile, the K-12 focus at the state level is mainly on providing access to OER resources for use by educators or librarians. These might be curriculum instruction content like lesson plans or full courses, assessments, activities, etc., or professional learning resources on key topics in the field, like personalized learning. OER is usually also characterized by what we call the 5 R's. Those are retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute. So retain meaning you can make and keep your own copies of the materials. Reuse meaning that you can use the material however you see fit. The material can be revised, adapted, or modified, and even improved. Remixing would mean combining various resources into perhaps a single thing or into something new. And redistributing, meaning that it's material that can be shared with others. So with all that said, I'd like to introduce our 4 speakers today. Joining us from Chippewa Valley Technical College is Vince Mussehl. From the University of Wisconsin-Stout, Bob Butterfield. From the Department of Public Instruction, Elizabeth Neuman. And from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Kristin Woodward. So we're going to start off with Vince Mussehl from Chippewa Valley Technical College. And Vince, I will kind of turn the presentation or the mic over to you. I guess just let me know whenever you want me to advance a slide.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Hello, everybody. My name is Vince Mussehl, and I'm the library director at Chippewa Valley Technical College in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I'm also an advocate for open education and have some successful experiences working with faculty to adopt open resources. I also teach classes at the college that use open or affordable resources. Can you advance, Jeff, please? So today I just wanted to talk a little bit about a current campaign surrounding affordable resources, which encompasses open resources that we refer to as the Affordable Resource Movement. So this past summer, we were awarded the WILS Ideas to Action Fund for $5,000 and some project management time from WILS to provide support for the Community for Open Wisconsin, or COW, to bring a greater sense of cohesion surrounding open ed in the state. So Bob will talk more about COW in a little bit, but I just wanted to share a little bit of background on the project with you. Next slide, Jeff. All right, so if you think about it, Wisconsin is all over the map, but not really on the map, or at least yet. So this means that we have several different educational organizations doing many different things surrounding open ed. An example, one college might be providing faculty incentives to develop or adopt content, while another college might have absolutely no background on open ed at all. So essentially, institutional knowledge and support varies significantly among these different institutions, and it's for a variety of different reasons. So the goal of the Affordable Resources Movement Project is to determine if Wisconsin needs or wants some form of centralized or unified support to bring these dynamic organizations together. So this unified support, we're hoping, would bring everyone in Wisconsin kind of on the same page by creating a consistent message about the value of open ed that we could potentially use at a state level, and also bring it back to individuals' respective institutions. The consistent message would also help Wisconsin kind of collectively advocate for OER funding to the legislature or to any other possible avenues. The project would also help to minimize duplication of effort by different ed organizations by enhancing communication and awareness. So a lot of us are doing a lot of different things, and some of these things are the same. So we hope to kind of avoid that at some point. Another objective for the project is to provide training or development at a state level to bring Wisconsin together. So bring us all together and close some of these knowledge gaps between our different educational organizations. So again, referring back to my first note that we're kind of all over the map, this would kind of help us get on the same page. And then finally, the project will help determine how and where to house all of these collected or shared resources, possibly in a form of a state repository. Possibly there's already ones out there that we might be able to work with, but we could take a look at that as the project moves on. So at the end of the day, we also know that open ed can oftentimes have emotions attached to it. So Wisconsin has many individuals who are very passionate about open ed, and I think You can attest to this if you've been to the E-ffordabilty Summit. So we hope that we're able to kind of collaborate to provide a wealth of knowledge, the wealth of knowledge and experiences that this project can kind of get together and capitalize on. Next slide, please, Jeff. All right, so I drafted a rough kind of a timeline of the project plan. At the end of this month, we kind of hope to have a steering committee meeting in Madison with a variety of different stakeholders from K-12, public libraries, academic libraries, the Wisconsin Tech system, the UW system, and DPI. And we really want to get these people together around a table to provide input or expertise or any knowledge that they can have towards the project. So over the next 6 months or so, we'll be researching how other states are successfully moving open ed forward, as well as what interests and needs there currently are in our state. So we want to know if Wisconsin is really wanting to kind of be more cohesive on this. And then if all interests and needs are there, we hope to provide some sort of statewide training or awareness campaign to bring us all together, again, onto the same page, potentially in the spring. And then after that, depending on where we are with the research, we'll develop a needs proposal to bring to our stakeholders, to the steering committee, and to those that have participated, and then advocate for these needs. So this plan is very fluid, obviously, but it depends on the needs and interests out there. So it may change as we dig more deeply into the project. I guess it was important for us to have something to bring to the table for COW members and the steering committee, which meets for the first time at the end of this month. So ultimate goal to provide cohesive support to move Wisconsin more towards open. That concludes my little piece here.
Thank you so much, Vince. Next up to talk to us about what's going on at UW-Stout, and I think a little bit more about the Committee for Open Wisconsin, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Butterfield. Bob, I think you can unmute yourself and we'll be ready to go.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Vince. My name is Bob Butterfield, and I am the Assistant Library Director and Director of Instructional Resources at UW-Stout in Menominee. So just a little background about what we do at Stout. Affordable content in the classroom has always been a priority at Stout. Our program, in fact, is developed to provide low-cost content for the classroom for our students, whether regardless of what the format is, whether it be print, ebooks, access codes that are to access homework sites, things like that. So we've done this a long time, and we've always known that and recognized that there is a huge barrier, cost is a huge barrier to equal access in education. And we're fortunate here at Stout in that we are a campus-operated unit that's specific function is to advocate for students and affordability. So what I want to do today is just touch on three really big areas that I'm going to compress into 12 minutes. I apologize for the unpolished view. We've distributed almost 70,000 textbooks this week, so I'm a little fried, so bear with me. I want to touch just a little bit about what we're doing at Stout and how that's kind of morphed. I want to talk about the E-ffordabilty Summit, and then touch on the Community for Open Wisconsin. And then, as always, I am available to anyone at any time if you want to call me or email me, and we can have a bigger discussion. But anyway, Jeff, if you could go to the next slide, actually the next slide after that, because I pulled a Jeff and missed the first slide. Thank you. We started our OER program in 2015, and our initial objective was not to replace commercial content, but to find a way to actually mitigate the cost of our program. Our intent was to never go 100% OER, and we just wanted to reduce things enough that we could continue to provide a very quality program to our students at a low cost. We started off with some grant funds from the University of Wisconsin. And with that, we did some things like join the Open Text Network, which I've been honored to be a member of the steering committee the last couple of years. We had some faculty members do some book reviews, and then we had a modest pilot where 4 courses adopted OERs in that first year. Since that time, we have grown to use OERs in about 21 different classes, and the savings is somewhere north of $150,000. I don't have an exact number because I haven't done the math for the fall semester yet. But what we found is that the return on investment in converting courses to OER is really huge. So we also know that our intent over the next 2 years is to really ramp up our program, because we admittedly have done really nothing to purposely go out and recruit. This is just as we have talked to individuals, they've been willing to be first adopters, and already we've seen this great success without even any kind of official approach. But our views of why we're doing this have really morphed over the last couple of years. And Jeff, if you could go to the next slide, please. We have really come to understand the social justice aspects of providing not only low cost but quality resources to our students, and the importance of the OER movement to that end. Also, we started to have a concern in that much of OER to date has been funded through grants, and we've really started to focus on the sustainability questions surrounding OER because we want it to continue to be a very viable option against commercial products going forward into the future. We also had a feeling that there was a lack of coordinated discussion about OER in Wisconsin. So that led us to initiate the E-ffordabilty Summit as a venue to do this, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. We also became heavily involved for the Community for Open Wisconsin, and we've really tried to become the professional squeaky wheel in helping to build the effort to be vocal advocates and supporters of an open Wisconsin. And Jeff, if you could change slides for me. One way we've done that is with the E-ffordabilty Summit. Our unit motto has always been to find affordability wherever it lives. So in discussing on how we could promote that idea to the benefit of our students, my staff and I felt that it would be really helpful if we had an event that allowed a group of people who are interested in similar issues to get together to exchange ideas and have discussions. And we always found a reason not to do this. We were always too busy, or something was always standing in the way. But my staff really cornered me one day, and they said, let's just have this thing, let's throw it together, see how it works, and we'll make adjustments if need be. So we did. We held the first E-ffordabilty Summit 2 years ago, and we invited a variety of participants that were working in this area. And we really capitalized on the idea that there's value in learning from each other and finding ways that we could collaborate together. So we didn't want to make it just a higher ed thing. We invited folks from 4-year campuses, 2 years, the technical colleges, public libraries, and the K-12 world, because although the content we use may be different and our patrons may be somewhat different, a lot of the questions and hurdles that we had were the same, and it really hurts us to try to develop answers on those on our own. So we also opened it up to a variety of people, not just librarians, who are very super important in this area, but to technologists, to teachers, to administrators, legislators, anybody else who has a stake in the game of providing quality resources. So our first summit, like I said, was 2 years ago. We had 50 attendees from 26 institutions. Last year, we held our second, which saw over 200 attendees from over 60 institutions, a great rate of growth. It was a really good response. We're preparing for the third summit in March of 2019. It'll be March 27th and 28th here at UW-Stout. And in the spirit of affordability, we do not charge a registration fee, and we even include several of the meals to make it a better professional development opportunity for our friends in public libraries or K-12 schools or any place that may have limited professional development funds. And we also were honored to be able to host the first face-to-face meeting of the Community for Open Wisconsin. Jeff, if you could change slides for me. Also, a couple of years ago, at the Open Ed conference in Anaheim, a group of folks that were attending from Wisconsin met during one of the breaks, and we asked the question, what can we as a state do to promote affordability and open to our students? And really the answer became the Community for Open Wisconsin. This group petitioned the Wisconsin Library Association to form a new special interest group. And the purpose of the group is literally to advocate and collaborate for affordability of educational resources in Wisconsin through the use of open educational resources, library resources, collaboration for publisher cost reduction, and related initiatives. Really a great and noble thing to do, but if you're from a K-12 school, if you're from a public library, if you're from anywhere, you might be saying, well, why is this important to me? And I would return is because this is what we do. This is right in our wheelhouse. The social justice implications of access to information and access to education. It's about taking many brains and having them work together for a common good and a common cause for all of the students in Wisconsin, regardless of what institution it is they're attending, or even if they're just lifelong learners. It's about being a voice for the voiceless. It's about a group of people who are experts in this area, who are the experts of information, to be able to speak for faculties, teachers, for students, when they're asking questions like, why do books cost so much? Why are textbooks so expensive? Why is this a barrier to me getting a good education? And finally, it's just because there's strength in numbers. We are much more strong and able to have our opinions and voices heard if we work together than if we try to work on these issues separately. So COW is intended to be a group of action. And for those of you who have been kind of watching for more information, hopefully you got the bulletin on what's been happening over the summer. We've been trying to do some of the behind the scenes kind of things to get ready to really rock and roll as we get the steering committee involved. And we hope that all of you will be willing to join us in working together to help students or patrons or lifelong learners through the length and breadth of Wisconsin, so that they have access to all of the knowledge that's available out there without having to pay exorbitant fees. And finally, Jeff, if you could go to the next slide. What are we planning on doing? Now, Vince very succinctly let you know some of the really the detail kind of things that we're working on, but broadly, we're looking at educating, creating, collaborating, and advocating for Wisconsinites, whether you call the people you work with students or patrons or customers or neighbors or whatever they may be. We really want you to consider this as a very valuable use of your time. I think that there is a lot of value to the people that we serve. We would love to see you join the herd. We would like you to really be a part of the movement. Sorry, with a name like Cow, you have to have really dumb jokes like that. And with that said, in that 10, 12-minute version, this is what we're doing. This is who we are. We want you to be part of it. We want this to be a really strong organization. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon.
Thanks so much, Bob. Next up, and I'll say I'm a member of COW. I also will add my voice to Bob's recommending people get involved. Next up, joining us from the Department of Public Instruction is Elizabeth Neuman. Elizabeth, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Neuman, and I work for DPI. I'm actually on one of our 2 library teams. So if you're not familiar, DPI actually does quite a bit of library stuff as well. Hopefully most of you know that. And one of the projects that I work on and a lot of the folks on our library teams also work on is WISELearn. So Jeff, you can jump ahead, thanks. So WISELearn Educator Portal, this is an agency-wide initiative that supports Wisconsin's digital learning plan, which essentially covers equitable, personalized, applied, and engaged digital learning for all students. And we're able to do this by providing a space for educators to connect and share best practices and high-quality resources. This does include both OER and copyrighted content for the classroom and for professional learning. And so, like Jeff said early on, the K-12 focus is slightly different than the academic focus in that the bulk of what we're providing is directed towards the educator and not necessarily for the student. But that could, of course, change in the future. That is just our current focus. And so we do use that very common definition of OER, that it's free and openly licensed instructional materials. They reside in the public domain or have the Creative Commons license applied to them, and that really the focus is that that content can then be shared and remixed and reused, so then it's actually applicable to your situation. You can jump up ahead to the next slide. So another element of WISELearn is the U.S. Department of Ed's Go Open initiative, and Wisconsin is a Go Open state. There are a few things that we have to do in order to be a Go Open state, but in addition to the repository section, which I'll cover in a moment, we actively collaborate with a lot of the other Go Open states that are involved in this, and quite a few states that aren't technically Go Open. But we talk a lot about general topics on content creation and curation best practices, and that would cover vetting rubrics. You know, how do you determine that a piece of content is high quality? Different ways to engage our authors and users of the content. We discuss repository platform specifications to make it optimal use. We talk a lot about other national standards around content description, so the metadata side of it. We talk about different specifications that are put out through IMS Global. If you're familiar with that, it's a membership organization that helps develop standards around ed tech products. So there are quite a few standards that relate to the academic standards, so competencies and academic standards and how that data is transferred between platforms, how content itself is transferred between platforms. And so we have a lot of those discussions already with our partner states. But really the main focus is that what we want to do is have this content available and make it that delivery of the content between platforms or to the user as seamless as possible. So having open content and then also making it accessible to the end user. We can jump to the next slide. And so this is just a little video. It's just under 2 minutes long, and hopefully it plays okay and everybody can hear it.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit play, and hopefully somebody can let me know if audio is coming through.
Oh, I'm not hearing anything.
I hadn't thought about the audio. Let's see.
If we need to skip it, that is okay.
Let's see, is there... Well, how about if we use subtitles?
That works too.
All right, great suggestion from the field on subtitles. Let's try it again. Here we go.
Okay, sorry about that the audio didn't work. Good thing that all of our videos have closed captions. So this next slide is actually showing the repository itself. What we are currently using is a custom microsite through OER Commons. And so the nice thing about the custom microsite is that while it contains, activities, assessments, lesson plans, courses, reading materials, all this type of OER content, it really is truly a space for just Wisconsin educators and librarians to use. We have the customizing. We use customized metadata as well, including very specific classroom subjects that we use in Wisconsin. So the naming of those has been updated. We also have all of our academic standards uploaded in there, so then you can search content by standards. And ideally in the platform itself, the content would actually be authored by our Wisconsin educators. We do have quite a bit of content that's just linked to, that's housed somewhere else, that somebody else authored, that our Wisconsin educators have deemed as high quality. But the bulk of the content ideally would be actually authored by the educators themselves. Next slide. And so this is just showing within the platform, we have a nice feature, it's called groups. And so here it's collaboration space around specific projects. So many of these have actually stemmed from our OER innovation grants, which I can talk to on the next slide. And so currently we are offering 20 grants of up to $10,000 each. We did do grants last year as well. I believe they only offered 10 grants last year, but this year we've been able to bump it up to 20. And so the bulk of these grants are actually awarded to entities. It would be school districts, working with the CSA, it could be libraries as well, that would be developing support and professional learning around high quality, standards aligned math and ELA curricula. And there is some criteria on that over the curricula that has been rated high quality by a third party source such as EdReports. Then the other 40% of those grants would be for creation or curation of the high quality materials in any subject. We do have, I believe, 10 awarded so far this year, but everything will be uploaded into the site by next May. Some of the highlights from this first round of awards, we have a project titled Connect, Explore, and Engage in Authentic Learning. And that was actually through Montello School District and CSA 5. And then there's one called ROVE, which is Remotely Operated Vehicle and Engineering Curriculum from the Wisconsin Water Library Merrill School District in CSA 9. And so that's just giving a little bit of a taste of 2 of the current awardees. And all of this information is available on the DPI website underneath the WISELearn area of the website about what the criteria are for this grant cycle. The application deadline has passed, but Potentially next year we'll be doing the same thing with more grants. I guess stay tuned for that. But if you'd like more information, I can share the URL at the end if you need it. And then lastly, we can go to the next slide. So a lot of this, since folks on this call are a mix of K-12, public library, academic, tech schools, really what we'd like to talk about and what has already been spoken about is how do we bridge our projects into these other groups. And so when we think about WISELearn, while the focus is mainly K-12, it is set up to contain content that is beyond the K-12 environment. So for example, we currently include the MIT Open Courseware in the repository, so you can find it there. The platform itself can be linked into learning management systems, and so that functionality is already in place. So if you found that some of the content would be applicable to students in higher ed and you use Canvas, those connections can be made. We have been having some discussions internally, throwing out some ideas. One of them recently was potentially could WISELearn be integrated into teacher prep courses in the higher ed space? Since they would be, teachers would be coming into the K-12, having some familiarity with WISELearn and what we're doing might be helpful to have that come up while they're still in school themselves for teaching program. But in general, we are really willing to collaborate and have more discussions. So definitely feel free to reach out. I know our contact information will be shared, and we look forward to seeing what happens in the future.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That's going to bring us to our fourth presenter, which is Kristin Woodward from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Kristin, you're up. Hopefully.
You have to actually use your microphone.
There we go. Great.
I told this tiny little room that I'm in to go to the first slide. So there we go. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to Vince and Bob and Elizabeth for speaking along with me today, and to Jeff and Wills for coordinating the program. I'm Kristin Woodward from UW-Milwaukee Libraries. I am the teaching and learning team lead in the user services division of the libraries. And I am also the campus co-lead for our open textbook and open educational resource project. What I'd like to do today is give a little bit of context for our project and how we've sort of grounded it in our academic programs at our university, and leverage some of the national trends and collaborations that are going on in order to do that. And then I'd also like to share a little bit about 3 classes that have successfully adopted open textbooks. If I don't get to all 3 of them in detail, you'll have the slides that you can kind of look at with a few more details about each of those. This is a very exciting time for us. We are in our 4th fall term of open textbook adoption. Let me see if I did that right. I believe that's true. We started our program in 2015 in the fall as members of the Open Textbook Network. So that means that we did a recruitment and awareness campaign among our faculty, and we provided small stipends in order to have our faculty get engaged with the textbooks available through the Open Textbook Library, and ask them to write reviews there. And that did result in a few initial adoptions. So by the winter of 2016, we had our first adoptions. We're now at 17 different courses adopting, and 3 years of consistent growth, so that we are now at that almost 10,000 students impacted, and we've just crested over the $1 million in savings mark. So we work along with our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and our grant funding that we provide to faculty as an incentive for adoption and curricular redesign comes from our students. So we actually receive funding through educational technology grants that our students administer every spring. So we are in our 4th year of funded open textbook program, and students seem to be continuing to want to support that with their dollars. Why don't we go to the next slide? Another view of the courses and the impact that those courses have. We have targeted our adoption push among our 100 and 200 level courses, as you can see from the courses represented here. You can also see that the number of students enrolled in a course and the number of semesters of longevity really add up. So one of the things that we really focus on in our adoption is ensuring that our faculty are committed for at least 2 or 3 semesters of a trial of the textbook before we provide those funds. Each of these has a little bit of a different characteristic in terms of the motivations that the faculty had for adopting, as well as the approach that they took to integrating the open textbook and leveraging those 5 R's of openness in that adoption process. Let me move forward. As Vince and Bob and Elizabeth were describing, there are different ways of thinking about OER, or open educational resources. And for us, the emphasis so far has been on open textbooks. Bob also mentioned the Open Textbook Network, and I was describing a little bit about the workshop model that they use for helping campuses get started. And this is actually a diagram from the Open Textbook Network that helps us to communicate with our faculty exactly how open textbooks come to be open, what makes them open, what makes them different from a traditional textbook. It also helps to dispel some of the myths. For example, one myth might be that open textbooks are just something that were self-published, and therefore there's no quality or review in that production of that textbook. So using this as part of our talking points with the faculty, we explained that there's typically some funding model, whether it's from the state system or it's from a philanthropic source, that supports the publication of the textbook and supports the free and open distribution of that textbook. In other words, it's born open, it's designed to be open and redistributed. Okay, we can go forward. My motivation for starting this program at UWM is grounded in our access mission at our university. So as a large urban campus, we know that at least 60% of our students are not purchasing their textbooks. And we know this both anecdotally, and we know it from reports of students coming to us throughout the semester desperately looking for parts of their textbook, all the kinds of things that you experience in reference transactions, and then also the reports that we're getting from our faculty. One thing that we look to when we are sharing this back with faculty is the research from Fisher, Hilton, Robinson, and Wiley. The first piece of research that came out to support our assertion that making sure that students had access to their materials was essential to retention on our campus is the study from the Journal of Computing in Higher Education that showed that having open textbooks was as good or better as a traditional textbook. So that seems like kind of a benign assertion, but really what it means is that by requiring open textbooks, we're not compromising any kind of quality in the classroom. And we're giving ourselves sort of permission to say that using things that are open and shared widely could be a pathway to making sure that students have access to the materials they need. Go to the next one, please. And then more importantly, we see a development in the literature toward the concept of actual academic success. So first do no harm, but then determine what the success points are. So continuing in their study together, we have Hilton, Fisher, Wiley, and William this time. And in this particular study, they're actually looking at whether students continue to take courses if the materials are available to them, allowing them to be successful in their first semester. Do they continue to register and stay in school and progress toward degree? Okay, next one. And then a little bit about our initial adoption of an open textbook in Psychology 101. Our faculty undertook a study to determine just how it impacted students in the first semester of adoption. So again, thinking about some of the myths about open textbooks, many faculty in initial conversations are concerned that students only want to read in print or that there is some cognitive benefit to reading in print. In my colleagues' study in psychology department, they found that students most of the time used the online textbook rather than printing pages of it or purchasing the available print-on-demand copy. In a very brief winterim style course, they found that students actually got started with the content a full day earlier. And in a course where students are required to achieve a B or better to go on to the next segment of the coursework, students took fewer attempts to earn satisfactory quiz grades, showing that having access to that material is essential to them moving forward and building the knowledge that they need to be successful in the course. That showed through again when students had an average of 4-point increase in their overall grade, moving from an 85 to a 90. Can go forward. So with that sort of initial test of success in mind in the first semester, we have moved forward with confidence, adding approximately 1 or 2 large enrollment courses each fall. And we do that by providing stipends to the department and requiring that the adoptions be across multiple or all sections of the course. We have to be a little bit flexible with that because staffing is such in higher ed that if we required everyone to do it, we probably wouldn't get the kind of, I don't know, successful buy-in that we would like to have. Not everyone teaches the same course every semester. Not everyone teaches 100-level courses all the time. So there's a little bit of variation. So in each of these sections, we had a slightly different version of the use of the 5 R's. Our astronomy was a straight adoption of the open textbook. They used the OpenStax version and replaced a $75, $77 textbook. And they really didn't make a lot of changes. But you can see that with 300 plus students in the course, the immediate first semester savings for that course was $27,000 in student money. For communication, we had a slightly different approach. The faculty and graduate students in this course chose to remix an existing speech textbook. So we had a slightly different funding model for them, and they used their funds not just to incentivize faculty, but to give small stipends to graduate students who could rewrite and sort of localize the chapters to the curriculum at UWM. So another benefit they found to being able to revise and remix that content. Our Psychology 101 has been through a couple of different iterations, but the most meaningful thing that they have done so far is to work together in a model sort of similar to what Elizabeth was describing at the K-12 level and really develop course materials that would go along with and make sustainable the open textbook in large lecture courses that are often taught by a cache of faculty, graduate students, and lecturers, and then making those materials available in a sort of hub through the learning management system. Why don't we go to the next slide? So a little bit more about the astronomy adoption. One of the things that the astronomy faculty provided for us was feedback that they collected from students at the end of the semester. So in addition to the project assessment that we asked them to do and share with other faculty in order to develop awareness and understanding of open textbook adoptions, they also asked students to speak directly to their experience. And of course, textbook savings was important, but having the convenience of a mobile-friendly textbook came up as a major asset for students. Probably similar to other campuses, our students work often 40 hours a week at UW-Milwaukee. Many of them have families, many of them commute, and not having to carry the giant astronomy textbook actually turned out to be a really big benefit to many of them, in addition to having that mobile access. Why don't we go to the next one? Some of the things that our psychology faculty worked on together were building a shared syllabus that was modular and adaptable, making sure that they had PowerPoints and quizzes based on content from the OpenStax available materials that are also OER. They took time to think about how, with the availability of these materials, they could focus on active learning design, turned their attention more to the GER outcomes of the course, and actually looked at integrating information literacy for the first time in the course. So the biggest benefit that we're seeing in our collaboration between the library and our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning is this real focus on what could we do if we knew that students had access to the materials and we didn't have to cover everything in lecture. Next. Just another view of that OpenStax instructor resource kit. Next. And then finally, a little bit more detail for you to perhaps go back to in thinking about the communication adoption. We'll go to the next slide so I can show an example. On the right side, you can see the University of Minnesota Library's version of Stand Up, Speak Out as it appears in the Open Textbook Library. On the left side, you can see the UW-Milwaukee remix of that textbook. Forward. And then just a little hint at the ways that we redesigned for GER focus again and rethought the way that we could use the textbook. We built our library instruction for Communication 103 right into the textbook, and you can see that we actually embedded videos and learning activities that were flexible for use in person, online, etc., into the textbook. You can go ahead. And then lastly, just to acknowledge that we make it very transparent to our students through our bookstore support, letting them know for their financial planning purposes what the cost of their textbook will be, and also to say that if this is something new to your campus, bookstores are aware of it and often willing to support it. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Kristin. The last section that we have here is Vince, I think, was going to talk to us a little bit more. Vince, I think we still have a few minutes if you wanted to kind of give us sort of your closing bit that you were going to do, and then we'll just take any questions that might come up at the end. Maybe. Vince, are you still with us? Okay. Well, we might have lost Vince, or maybe he got disconnected or something. So I think we'll just come along to, we're in the last 5 minutes anyway, so I think it's a good time for us to take any other questions for anyone that that you may have been holding until the end. Does anyone want to ask anything of our speakers, Elizabeth, Kristin, or Vince? Bob actually had to leave a little bit early. We'll just give a moment here in case anyone wants to throw a question in the chat window, or even unmute yourself and ask a question via audio if you'd like. This is the time where I should have had a few questions ready to go, but I don't. Okay. Well, I think we can probably...
I'll ask a question, Jeff.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. So this is Jennifer Chamberlain. I'm with the UW Colleges, and thank you so much to all the speakers for presenting on this topic. I guess what I'll ask is, beyond the community of Open Wisconsin, which is a huge leap forward and I think a great idea, I'm curious what any of you feel might be a singular, what would be the most impactful thing that could happen in the state to further advance OER in either of your particular institutions or just sort of in the movement as a whole? Is there something, again, I'm sort of taking cow off the table because I know that's a big step forward, but are there other sorts of either, whether it be funding or I guess I won't feed you all ideas here, but what do you think could really be the next big thing to advance OER in Wisconsin?
Anyone on the panel want to grab that?
Well, this is Elizabeth. I'll jump in. I know from our perspective in the K-12 side, a lot of what our focus has been on is ways to actively engage educators around the state. And so whether it is new forms of outreach, ideas for just placing this content in the hands of the user as easy as possible and getting everyone around the state to start talking about this at a bigger mass has been something that we are really trying to work on. And so I know that maybe doesn't answer your question, but in a way that's really what our focus has been on recently.
Great, thank you so much. We have one more question that came in from Catherine Johnston, who I think that's Catherine from Marian University. She said, for other academics who might be doing some open initiatives, we are trying open source this semester, but finding students are printing out the entire online book. Printing is still free here, although that might change. Have other academics who've tried open or OER programs seen massive printouts being done of the online book? Anyone have experience with that, or maybe a suggestion about it?
So, hi, this is Vince. I have a suggestion for that, something that might help. So, as I mentioned, I also teach classes, and we use books like that. I think it's really helpful and important if faculty or instructors would chunk that material. So probably one of the scariest things is for a student to see a 300-page book on day one of the semester that they can just print out. So perhaps only linking, if it's an online course or something, only linking the first chapter or two. They might print it out. They probably will print it out. But by chapters 4 or 5, they'll probably change their minds on whether or not they want it printed and use it electronically. So I believe that chunking is really important when it comes to that. And I wonder what Kristin would have to say as more the instructional designer view also.
Yeah, I really appreciate your use of that phrase chunking, because it gets to the heart of what the best practice would be in terms of instructional design. And it would also put that focus on just using that part of the text. One of the best practices that I've recommended to any instructor who has concerns about students wanting print versions of the textbook is to ask students to download a PDF copy of the text on their local device or computer or wherever it might be. Because I think that the average student isn't going to highlight or like annotate a full 300-page text. And hopefully we're not asking them to do that from an instructional design perspective again, but they might want to have the print copy so that they know where that text is. So if you thought back to that one slide that I showed from the open textbook library, many of the open textbooks come in multiple formats, and the online versions are interactive and nice because they link out and that sort of thing. The videos are live, but there's usually also a straight up PDF version that students could just download that wouldn't take up too much space on their device, and they could always go back to it.
Great, those are really great answers. Thank you both. Okay, well.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Oh, sure.
I just wondered, in terms of universal design and accessibility, if these companies that have the textbooks that are online, is it possible to have print versions, either PDF or book version, in the library just to accommodate students that might need, for some reason, that sort of format for a visual or textual reason?
I can answer that. We're working with an ed psych course for students who are underserved in numerous ways. They're underprepared, perhaps they are economically disadvantaged in some way, perhaps they have a learning disability. And so we're concerned about them understanding how to interact with those textbooks, for sure. But what we did was we worked with our bookstore, and we explained that the textbook we had selected was not a textbook like OpenStax, publishing textbooks where you could just order it through their publisher, a hard copy. Instead, students would probably want to purchase, rather than standing at the printer, their own copy of the textbook. So we worked with like our campus print shop to get a price, and then when students want the textbook, they can order it through the bookstore. It might take a little while, but then the print shop would produce it, and that way we're only printing for students who are really interested in having a copy. The thing about OER is that nobody can make a profit on it. It's not legal. So especially if it's labeled as non-commercial or share alike, you have to know how the original Creative Commons license was intended. So you definitely don't want to charge up or have your bookstore add their percentage on top of the printing cost.
Thank you. That's why I was thinking library, but I like the bookstore example. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all for presenting to us today. A really big thank you to our 4 speakers. Obviously, we couldn't put these kinds of great programs on without a willingness from community members to share their own expertise with their colleagues. And thank you to everyone who attended. We certainly hope that you got a lot out of today's session. I know I did. Every now and then it's great to hear how various initiatives are going to keep the hype going and the excitement. So we are a little bit over time, so I'm going to go ahead and bring us to the end of our session. Keep an eye out on our website for a recording of today's session. I think we can also share the slides as well. And thank you again for attending. Keep an eye out for our next WilsWorld Shorts which right now would have been an amazing time for me to have that date at hand. I don't. So we'll say thank you again for coming, and have a great afternoon, all.
Thanks, everyone.